Thank you for joining me. Are all dinosaurs extinct? I don't talk much about that on this channel. I talk about living pterosaurs, non-extinct pterodactyls, so to speak. But what about the dinosaurs? Well, I haven't received many reports from anywhere around the world about a dinosaur that's still alive. A couple I can think of offhand, but mainly it's the pterosaurs, flying dinosaurs as some people call them. Well, why do I receive these reports? Danny Rodriguez was sitting outside his house in Jupiter, Florida with a friend at about 2:30 in the morning when something flew over their heads. They watched it pass over Danny's house towards the backyard. Danny later reported details to a cryptozoologist. Quote, "It was a beige-brownish color with pointed wingtips, no feathers, pointed beak, and what made me think pterosaur was that long pointed thing protruding from the back of its head." I live in Florida, so I've seen my share of cranes and whatnot, but this was not a bird. A second later, something made us look across the street where we saw a second one flying over a house, flying down into that house's backyard. The first creature was only about 4 feet wingspan. It was a lot smaller than I would think a pterodactyl would be. As soon as we saw the second one across the street, we immediately looked at each other and just shook our heads. And I said, "Was that what I think it was?" And he said, "Nah, it had to be something else." Unquote. It's a long story, but basically, I've led an expedition in Papua New Guinea in the year 2004, and I've written several books about modern pterosaurs, not just from that part of the world in the Southwest Pacific, but in other parts of the world. Ropen courtship in Washington State. Teenager biker in shock. Pterodactyl pair tries to mate. This sighting of 2 long-tailed modern pterosaurs was in about 1987. In the words of the eyewitness, quote, "I was riding my bike home from a friend's house around 5 p.m., unquote. I lived in the country with my parents. I heard a strange noise, a screech. I looked to my left. On a wood plank fence were 2 of the biggest bird-like creatures I could ever imagine. I almost crashed my bike. I noticed their heads, then I thought, this can't be. Could they be dinosaurs? Ropens? I stood on the road and watched them for about an hour. One was hopping off the fence and appeared like it was teasing the other one. They were huge. Their feet wrapped around a 2-inch by 6-inch plank. Their heads, maybe 4 feet long with the beak. Their tails were maybe 6 feet long. I was so scared. Including Asia, China, Taiwan, and Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, even India. I think I got one sighting in India. And we have reports from Africa, a good number, and quite a few from Europe, and many, in fact hundreds from North America. So why do I do this? Well, I think people need to know the truth about these things. In old times, people call them dragons. Okay, the dragon word has come out of favor even in the 19th century, 1800s. A modern dragon almost everywhere? Is it a bat-like bird or a ropen? It does not look like those 2 pictures. 2 ropens, one chased by a small bird, according to the lady who recorded them with her cell phone in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is reality. Detailed image stabilization and slowing down the motion. That reveals why this flying creature is unlikely to be any bird. Notice the complex wing flapping, unlike the simpler wing flapping of crows. So what is going on with these reports? Could they be misidentifications? Maybe a frigate bird in some parts of the world? Well, that doesn't work at all. What about frigate birds? Well, there have been one or two cases where a person has seen a frigate bird and thought it was a pterodactyl, or a ropen, as some people call it. And that's a possibility, but for most of the sightings, it's just out of the question. Frigate birds are oceanic birds, for example. And a great number of the sightings are in the central North America, including Kansas. In fact, you look at the population of humans in Kansas, and there's an extraordinarily large number of sightings of apparent modern pterosaurs in Kansas, far, far away from the oceans, Atlantic or Pacific. Why would there be so many frigate birds kind of congregating in the middle of North America? In Kansas? No, it's out of the question. Possibly people have a hallucination? No, because hallucinations don't work for these sightings. They come from different parts of the world, and there are similarities in the sightings. People from different religions, different backgrounds, different languages, cultures, a variety of experience and education, for example. All these differences should add up to different descriptions if there's something like hallucinations or misidentifications. But they don't. There's consistency in these sightings of apparent modern pterosaurs. Now, I've had this channel now almost 6 years, and it looks like we're going to have that anniversary. We need to remember that pterosaurs are thought of as like dinosaurs being extinct millions of years ago. This is an assumption, because if you look at it, that the scientists now who have been examining fossils of pterosaurs and dinosaurs for generations, many decades, they don't know all the species that lived in the past. Dinosaurs recently, even alive now, but we will get into some things about pterosaurs too later on. We're going to get into this dating of dinosaur fossils or bones. So these are actual bones that were dated directly. But we will deal with direct carbon dating of dinosaurs. Again, I'm Jonathan Whitcomb from Murray, Utah. Radiocarbon in dinosaur and other fossils. Now, we're only getting into a little tiny bit of this. They have a lot more than that. The Edmontosaurus, which is definitely a dinosaur, was dated, see, there are two of them in 2 different years. First of all, a vertebra, phalanx, a toe bone. These are 2 different years, 2014, 2013. Edmontosaurus It's believed in the standard teachings of evolution, it's believed to have lived between 66 million and 73 million years ago. Notice the two blue bars on the left representing standard model belief about how long ago the Edmontosaurus lived. Compare that with the direct dating of two bones of the Edmontosaurus. Can you see the tiny blue bars here? No? They are practically invisible, about 1,000 times shorter than the two tall blue bars. Standard model assumptions are off by a factor of about 1,000. Compare this dating inaccuracy with dating like somebody on the blind date. You go knock on the door and the father answers the door and says, well, no, my daughter's too young to date. Oh, she's not 18 years old? No, she was born last week. Can you come back in 18 years? And that's what we have with these datings. They're 1,000 times more recent when they're directly dated. And this is done with very careful consideration of avoiding contamination. It was done in the standard procedures and the standard way of taking care with avoiding contamination. Ceratopsia. Let's look at this. Ceratopsia is actually, as I understand, a general type that includes a Triceratops. But this is apparently, they didn't have a more specific identity of it at the time of the carbon dating. And the Pterodactyls, which is a fish, is generally considered to be to have lived 46 million to 65 million years ago, not more recently. And of course, with the dating now, we have, well, it's a lot more recently, more than 1,000 times more recent. We're dealing with dinosaurs.